Warning, we're going to be discussing events for currently running weekly anime.
If you want to avoid spoilers for certain shows, there are timestamps in the description.
Hello, everybody. Get your swimsuits ready because it's summer season and the Timesink Anime Podcast is back.
Yep, back to our regularly scheduled programming, more or less, because we're still trying to kind of get back into the habit of doing this on a weekly basis.
But seriously, those swimsuits.
Yes, swimsuits. It's gonna be a relatively hot season in both the fact that there's some pretty good shit coming out right now, and that it is getting really goddamn hot out, actually.
It's a hot season for hot weather.
Yep.
It's summer's crazy. Like, there's a lot of good stuff popping up.
Yeah, there is a lot of really good stuff coming out this season.
So much stuff coming out that we haven't got a chance to get around to all of it yet.
Yeah, but we'll discuss that in the future. Woohoo! We are procrastinating because we're idiots.
It's kind of procrastinating, and it's also kind of just there's a ton of stuff to watch right now. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
More than last season for sure.
Yeah, last season it was kind of a lull. There was a handful of good things, but nothing really that stood out like amazing last season. But I mean, aside from Fruit Basket beginning, but that's kind of more the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah. So
this season
we've watched about 6 new shows so far, and we're going to talk about those today. And then next week we're going to be talking about probably some more new shows, and also figuring out what we're actually going to keep actually talking about for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it seemed like, I don't know about you, more or less I've kind of had I picked at least because we've talked a little bit about this off microphone, which we were planning on cutting it down to half of what we counted in the past or talked about in past seasons. And so we are going to be cutting it down to at least half, so it's going to be a grand total of 6 shows, which coincidentally is how many we're talking about today.
So to start off the list, we first are going to talk about Dr. Stone. This is the cash cow, the big old money horse that people are bringing in for this season.
Crunchyroll has also been pushing the hell out of this show, enough to the fact where they are literally putting their logo in like the opening sequence, actually. Like they're the ones funding it or something. It's the kind of idea that they're getting across.
I think the show's produced by Crunchyroll.
I think so, yeah.
Or it might not be produced, but localized or something like that. Crunchyroll's a big hand in the show.
Yeah, they have a huge hand in the show, and they're certainly making it known. So
the source material for Dr. Stone, as many of you probably know, is incredibly popular. Mm-hmm. Is it Shonen Jump?
Yes, it is a Shonen Jump series. Yeah, and it's a very different shonen, very different than your standard shonen affair.
Well, so the story behind it is Dr. Stone was originally going to be a story about Taiju, yeah, the big buff muscly guy.
Yeah.
Turns out he wasn't that popular. Nobody liked him. Everybody liked Senku more. So the author ended up switching his focus to have the story be about Senku, I guess, and now it was kind of stumbling, but now it's doing really well.
Yeah, kind of. It's basically they've decided to focus more on Vash the Stampede Light over there, because that's what some people have pointed out. He looks like Vash the Stampede, kind of with his hairstyle.
So I'm really liking the show so far. We've seen the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, the first episode was incredibly well paced. By the way,
I actually was a little let down with the second episode in terms of I thought the first episode was better, because with the introduction of the strong man, strong middle school man, I thought it was a little kind of too campy, because in the first episode they're it's fantasy, but also we're going to use science to solve everything. So we're okay, maybe this is going to be a fantasy show grounded in a little more of the science side. And then all of a sudden, this fucking middle schooler shows up and starts punching lions with the bare hands. He killed a lion with one punch.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really even stopped to consider how insane it was at the time. It did seem to be a little bit more grounded in realism at first. I mean, about as realistic as a kid who's literally counting seconds to
it's obviously fantasy, and that's just it's a minor gripe. It didn't really take away from my enjoyment.
I was still enjoying it nonetheless, because even as ridiculous as some of the concepts are in this show, it's still a ridiculously entertaining show. Especially just the banter between Senku and Taiju. They're both incredibly fun characters to watch kind of play off each other.
Yeah, they have a very good straight man comedy guy. Kind of feel
the fool
to
and the
them.
straight man.
Yeah,
it's a bit as old as time.
Because Taiju's just like, yes, I am strong. I will go do this thing, and then Senku's like, yeah, you're dumb.
Yeah, you big oaf.
I think they're characters that work really well together.
Yeah,
but I don't think I'd want to see either of these characters as they are on their own.
Yeah,
when they develop later, they might be more interesting. But as they are, they're very focused character traits. Where Senku's just like the nerdy guy.
Yeah, and Taiju's really smart.
Taiju's the really loud buff guy. But yeah, they mesh together on screen really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the show will point out to you time and time and time again, they're all about separating the brains and the brawn. It's a really good dynamic, and it really just fits their personalities, and it fits their chemistry incredibly well.
This new guy, though, I was really interested in him near the end of the episode. It felt like a lot of the second episode was just kind of setting up for him to be this nice guy.
Yeah.
But I was a lot more interested when he just punched the head off a statue, and he's like, oh, all adults are corrupt. We have to make a new world with only us young kids.
Yeah, and there's a bit of an idea to that. And it's fascinating because Senku wants to rebuild society from the ground up and do that, and basically face impossible odds, as he says, sprint to the top from the Stone Age to the modern age with the power of science. Meanwhile, this other guy wants to basically live in an untainted society where pretty much the people he deems worthy, so I imagine the ridiculously strong and or useful, are the only ones who actually live.
No, it wasn't based on how strong or useful they are. It was based on how corrupted they are. He didn't want adults around because they were like, oh, I was here before. You owe me all this stuff. He wants a fresh start. And with anyone who's in a position of power, they're not going to have a fresh start. So they wanted the youth, no one who really has anything at all. So they're all having a fresh start in this new world, and he couldn't trust people that had things before to accept that fresh start.
I guess so, but at the same time, it does seem like he sort of wants to go to a little bit more of a primitive kind of world, one where that's a little less on... Because he doesn't really seem to, at least as far as I've heard from, this might be not so much anime stuff, but more manga stuff that is going to be covered later, he seems to be more fascinated in a untainted Eden that isn't so much corrupted even by things like science and stuff like that. So it seems like he's more interested in having a quote-unquote idyllic state of nature type society, whereas Senku wants the modern sort of everything is scientific and in his worldview, that's perfect.
It looks like he's setting up to be just the antagonist of the series. Well, the localized antagonist, because I think the main antagonist is whoever's behind the turning everyone to stone thing.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, it's no surprise that this whole series starts off, considering Japan's history and stuff like that, the series starts off with a bang, with a bright light, basically. All of a sudden, everybody's stoned. Whereas in what actually happened, nobody existed anymore at that point. Because you'll see it a lot in Japanese media where they always, will almost always show, a big explosion of some kind. Obviously reference to what has actually happened in their history. Which, I'm not saying it is a bad thing, it's fascinating to see, once you're aware of that, how often it's actually used in Japanese media, and they kind of did that here. Because one of the biggest things people have talked about during, the atom bomb, when it was first being developed and stuff like that, or when that whole thing was a big fear, it's you'll see a light brighter than anything you've ever seen in your entire life, in that whole duck and cover propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know the one. But it's kind of silly, but it just, that was a little bit of a tangent.
It's an interesting little parallel.
It is. And I'm curious what caused this. And obviously that's also Senku, what he wants to figure out. What caused this to begin with?
Yeah, so I think the question is not, is Dr. Stone going to be a good show? I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good show. The question is it going to live up to the hype that everyone's surrounding it with?
Because there have been very few shows that have been ridiculously hyped up that haven't quite lived up to the hype, or some that, and even fewer that have lived up to the hype, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. What was the show that came out like 2 seasons ago that was like that actually did live up to that hype?
What, Promised Neverland?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that definitely lives up to its hype.
Yeah.
Shield Hero, not so much.
I can't believe I forgot that. That was my favorite show that season. But anyway, that aside, and we'll talk more about Shield Hero when we actually do our spring 2019 season wrap-up.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
Yep. So, enough about Dr. Stone. Next on our list is the other really big blockbuster, Fire Force.
Yeah, this is my favorite show so far this season, because not only does it have like really kick-ass Sakuga, especially in like the first episode, but it also has surprisingly deep character.
Yeah, surprisingly. I mean, like I didn't finish reading Soul Eater. I got really close to the ending. I just never got to finishing it. And this is by the same author as Soul Eater. I remember the characters being quirky and fun, and occasionally kind of disturbing, like depending on who you were looking at. But yeah, these first couple episodes did a pretty damn good job of like cementing like these characters and kind of what they're going through and what trials they'll have to overcome as the series progresses.
Yeah, at least with
Shinra,
yeah. I really expected the show to just be like badass fight scenes and
well, there was certainly a lot of
firefights. I didn't expect to immediately, like within the end of the first episode, feel so bad for Shinra, because you have the time old story. I was a kid and I had a nice family. Then all of a sudden, my family died for whatever reason, yada yada. Then I grew up to be a hero. But I think the way they portray Shinra is really interesting, because that the key thing here is that makes him so interesting is that smile he has, where whenever he's nervous, his face muscles tense up and it makes it look like he's smiling, or whenever he's upset or anything. But that small twist, I think, puts such a human touch on him, because all these situations where everyone thinks like he's in such a bad situation, he's torn up inside about it, but he's smiling and everyone thinks he's a monster. Like, oh, his mom just died and he's smiling. Yeah. That kid's a little piece of shit.
Exactly. That was something that certainly made me feel really bad for Shinra. They might have hammered home the point a little too much in the first episode. They kind of played it down a little bit, like, but still delivered like the punch I think needed to kind of convey those emotions like in the second episode a bit better. But the first episode still, it set up this character and his motivations and why he wants to be a hero in the first place really damn well. And one of my personal favorite things about this series so far is the heavy line work they do with the Infernals. It's such a stark contrast to the character designs of everything else, and it just makes them just stand out that much more and make them seem almost otherworldly.
Yeah, especially when you compare the line work of the people to the monsters.
Yeah.
It's a really artistic way of making this is different. This is a lot different than what you're looking at.
And this thing is it pops out more, and therefore it makes it a little bit more strange and a little bit more horrifying.
It's kind of like in what they do in Madoka.
Oh, yes.
How they have normal animated characters, and then the monsters are kind of like papercraft.
Yeah, it's just Shaft showing off. Like, this is how weird and avant-garde we are. Ooh.
But the point is, like, the more you shift something to a different art style in the same frame, or the same animation, the more weird it seems compared to everything else.
You know what other series? It's not anime, but another series that did this to great effect actually was Courage the Cowardly Dog. They did that all the time.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, they did that all the time.
King Ramsey.
Oh God, yes.
Terrified, like 10-year-old me.
Yeah, and it just made. And that was just one example. There are numerous examples of that show of incorporating different art styles just to kind of deliver like a creepy aesthetic to it. And basically, that's all I'm saying is that makes this show kind of stand out a lot to me, is how scary actually the Infernals seem to be. But less so in the second episode, actually, which was interesting because they set up in the first episode how the Infernals are these terrifying monsters, and like how much they refuse to be put down and stuff like that. But then in the second episode, it kind of shifts them almost immediately to almost being a little bit more sympathetic.
Yeah,
because
I think it's definitely a out of the norm kind of Infernal, because all the Infernals they do deal with are usually just...
Yeah, I mean, but the fact that they're introducing that plot point so soon kind of makes you realize, yeah, you're right, these were people at one point, and they're not all like ridiculously mindless monsters. Some of them are really just trying to do their best to cause as little damage to the survivors, because that's what the second episode was about, like what the Fire Force is actually there for. It's not just to kill the Infernals. It's to make sure the survivors that are left behind actually are okay at the end, or at least this specific division, because the captain,
the guy who's wielding Excalibur. I don't remember what his name is.
Arthur Boyle.
Yeah.
And it's very fitting because he believes he's the King Knight. He says that constantly throughout this episode.
He the way he interacts with like the Infernal at the end, and how, and he was all about like, I want to show my weapons in public, and it was a really interesting tonal shift how near the end he just goes up and just doesn't like make a big scene of it, just ends up just killing the Infernal.
He basically puts it to rest. He doesn't try to like fight it or make some grandiose display out of it. He just wants to do his duty, which at that moment is just making sure that this person, because it is still a person at that point, really. I mean, yes, it's an Infernal, but he was still human to some degree, trying to not hurt his daughter, and just sitting there calmly.
The world is fascinating. Like, I have so many questions, like little things about the show. Like the religious aspect is really interesting to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm curious if they need a priest or priestess or
a sister
on site.
Yeah.
For when they kill the Infernals, is this for calming the loved ones who are left behind? They're like, oh, we're sending someone to put their soul to rest, or is it actually like a magical incantation to make it so the Infernals disappear, or is it all of the above?
Well, I think it has to, judging from the captain's talk, it's basically, I think, all the above, really, because, or at least with his division specifically. His division, as he's pointed out, is different than others, like, especially with how he carries himself and how he instructs those in his team to carry themselves. He basically wants, as he pointed out, there are others who think of it as like a sacred duty, or they're part of a sacred ministry or something, and basically how they have no qualms with putting the Infernals to rest. Meanwhile, this team is kind of more focused on helping the survivors cope and actually have foundation to stand on. So I think to some extent both ideologies are possible. They want, with the sister on site, it may be a magical incantation. We might find out more about that later, but at least in this case, it's definitely about calming the citizens.
Yeah, I think that's mainly what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, the show so far seems to have been setting up rules for their quote-unquote magic. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't have... I think the only magic they have really is, like, pyrokinesis. Yeah. In different forms of pyrokinesis. Yeah, I think, like what you said, that they are literally just there to make everyone feel better. Mm-hmm. And I love seeing everyone's outfits, though. Yeah. Like, the sister, she's in a nun outfit, but it's, like, thick and padded, and it's got, like, armor on it. It looks so kick-ass. The captain's actually my favorite, because
the mask.
I'm a sucker for people in situations where they're hanging around other people with special powers, but they're on the same level as them without the special powers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That makes it so cool.
And just the fact that he has to go out with fucking 30 kilograms of equipment every time.
Yeah.
That's just.
I love how he makes a big deal. It's like, oh, this is nothing. I train every day.
And his just personality is really cool. He's such a responsible.
Yeah, and as he's and he doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of stuff that makes him angry. Even they pointed it out, except for let's have our weapons in public. That kind of made him go, okay, what did I just tell you? which I think is
like the one thing that makes him angry is not treating the family members right, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I want to know more about these characters, especially like the show has no shortage of personality when it comes to characters. Soul Eater was much of the same way. I love the characters in this so far. They're just so much fun, and they just have such good chemistry and bounce off each other so well.
So next up is GRANBELM, otherwise known as Magical Girl Mecha Battle Royale.
Yeah, it seems like the first episode had a hard time deciding what kind of show it wanted to be. Like it had like almost 5 genres like kind of thrown together. It's like, it's schoolgirls. Nope, it's magical girl. Nope, it's mecha. Nope, it's isekai. What the fuck is this?
It's I like it.
No,
I like it a lot. I wouldn't say isekai. It's more like a parallel world.
No, I'm joking, of course, because they even make that joke. It's like, is this another world? No, it's not another world. No, I wasn't saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying at first it kind of like gives you a little bit of whiplash with, okay, what exactly is this show's angle?
Yeah, so
I like it though.
First, we got to address the very, very large elephant in the room. The art design is the art team's. It's the same art team behind ReZero.
Yeah,
same
character designer and director, right?
Director, yeah, behind ReZero. So it's like the white hair girl.
The main one?
Does she have white hair? No, it's black hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, the black hair girl. She looks like Amelia.
Yeah.
Like, if she had white hair and a little bit of hairpins, she would look exactly like Amelia.
And pointed ears, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying.
I couldn't love all the art. In
I couldn't escape looking at this and thinking, this reminds me a lot of Madoka Magica, because you have like the pink-haired innocent girl, then you have the badass badass veteran with long flowing black hair.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little bit of a Madoka.
Yeah,
Homura was her name.
Yeah, Madoka and Homura.
Yeah.
But that aside, it's still an enjoyable watch so far, because for one thing, the mechas aren't CG. Like,
yeah, they're animated really well. I'm not super in love with the SD Gundam chibi style of mecha. I'm sure it'll grow on me, but at this point, it's just like.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this series so far, like they threw a lot at you in the first episode, and in the second episode, it seems like they're kind of breaking more down into like what exactly it is that we're watching. Because we're kind of figuring out more about some of these characters' backstories, like what the nature of magic and stuff is, like why this GRANBELM tournament exists.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any world-shattering or world-destroying implications here.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the premise is like mages still kind of exist, and everybody wants to be this cool big mage,
mm-hmm.
and you can only do that by winning the GRANBELM tournament every an amount of long years.
Yeah, a long time.
I don't exactly remember all of the details right now. But I think it's more of like a personal journey.
Yeah,
there might be more revealings later on. But yeah, like a lot of the focus seems to be on personal like wants.
Yeah,
like the main character.
The main girl, like the thing about her that I thought was personally fascinating is just the idea that she doesn't even think that her existence is really all that necessary. She's just kind of a normal person who, if she didn't exist, it wouldn't really make a difference to a lot of the people around her. She would just people would just go on with their daily lives without her. And this, as traumatic as it is actually the one thing that gives her self-worth. It's very Evangelion, actually.
It's the one thing that makes her special.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to how Evangelion functions in that regard with the main character. Like piloting an Eva is an absolutely like traumatic, horrifying thing, but it's the one thing that makes him worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So it's similar to that.
And there's the other girl that lost in the first. I think she lost in the first episode, right?
Yeah, she went explode.
And then she got, because when you die, it looks like when you die in that world, you don't die.
Yeah.
Your mech is gone and then you're kicked out of the tournament pretty much. She got essentially like ostrated from whatever group she was a part of.
Yeah.
Which seems like something that is probably going to cause her to go attack somebody or something.
Yeah, she looks like she's a little unhinged right now.
Yeah.
Then there's the other girl who I think is even more unhinged.
The redhead?
Yeah, the redhead. The fiery redhead, which is interesting because...
She's like the lead antagonist, it seems, right now.
And also possibly literally fiery, because if you think about it, she was complaining in the second episode about how hot her body was and stuff like that. But how she was taking an ice bath. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that's all about.
I think she might be sick with something.
Probably some magic sickness or something.
I imagine so. Like, I can't think of anything else at the moment.
It's a magic fever.
Yeah, magic fever. But it does bring up an interesting thing. Like, the whole premise of the show is there's only one mage. The Princeps mage is what they're referred to as. Although the title is GRANBELM, and then the subtitle is The Two Princeps. So, hi, totally not Yuri bait with not Madoka and not Homura. Like, I mean, I'm almost sure that's where it's gonna go, because it's a magical
now
girl.
Kiss.
Yeah, it's a magical girl show, and and just judging from the subtitles, like, oh, the two Princeps. Wonder what that's going to be. Are they both going to be the Princeps at the end, or are none of them going to be? I am interested because
Tune in next week for the sudden twist.
Yeah, is it really going to pull a Madoka where everything just goes completely off the
It's
fucking
episode
rails?
3. Anything can happen.
Yeah, episode 3 rule still applies. So next up, a little bit more of a lighter note. How heavy are the dumbbells you lift?
So I didn't come onto the show with very high expectations.
Yeah,
I was like,
just
okay,
thinking,
maybe it's gonna be a dumb kind of comedy fan service show.
and it was
Which
that.
it is, yeah. But it was done really well. So, like, the primary joke here is that they're making a show to get fat, lazy weebs to work out.
And it's well aware of what it's doing.
Very self-referential in what they're doing, which they kind of just revel in this stupidness.
Yeah, and even the character kind of acknowledges it's like, what's with this you're needlessly pandering to the
Yeah.
audience with this sexy display.
But I gotta hand it to them. They, first of all, equal opportunity fan service.
Yes.
Very large, muscly men. Second of all...
Which I'm not sure how many women are into that, sans one of the main characters.
But second of all, they give actual, genuine fitness advice.
Yeah.
Which I did not expect.
I wasn't expecting it either. I mean, and I was just kind of looking at, like, really? We're doing this? It's like, you're making it so obvious what you're doing. But that's kind of a strength in its favor, really, because it kind of adds to the comedy of it.
Yeah, it's just kind of very obvious kind of gag humor.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how consistent they are with showing the calories of every single thing she eats.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a funny joke that I hope kind of it'll be more funny if they keep it consistent for the entire series.
Like even like the protein like drink that she had like after training, they showed like the calorie intake that she was eating. I think this series isn't going to be like expand anything beyond this. I'm not like expecting any like groundbreaking revelations or anything like that. Like, and this is probably not even going to be a show that we're going to be talking about week to week because there's not a whole lot to talk about. But at the same time, it's still an enjoyable, fun, really funny show. Like, I wasn't expecting much. So that kind of helps a little bit, I think, in its favor. But
yeah, I think for at least the foreseeable future, I'm probably going to keep watching it.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like it's just going to be a fun
little show.
Exactly.
So next is Maidens in Your Savage Season, which is amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Like
it's like a slice of life drama.
Yeah.
Youth drama.
Yeah, that's the best way of putting it.
But the difference here is that it's from the female's perspective.
Yeah, it's a coming of age story and kind of like a story kind of exploring like somebody's sexual discovery, really, but through the perspective of a girl. Like, and this is something, it's not something I've seen a lot of personally, so that makes it a little bit more novel in my eyes.
We've had like youth stories from perspective of girls, but not specifically focused around like puberty and that kind of thing.
And blossoming sexual
They're
desires.
like asobi asobase, but
yeah, exactly.
That wasn't really serious.
No, this is a little bit more of a serious take on it. With all the awkwardness and because a lot of the humor comes with how awkward this period of life is.
Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable show, but in a funny, kind of tolerable way.
Exactly. Like it's just like it's hilarious like how many like sexual innuendos and like kind of imagery and stuff like the first and second episodes in particular are just like kind of playing on that fact, because the whole thing is like they're teenagers, they're kind of, and they're figuring this stuff out, but now they're at that point where they're just seeing it literally everywhere. Like, they can't escape it. Everywhere they go, they're aware of it and constantly made aware of it everywhere they go.
So that was such an amazing first episode for me, because the whole like first like 3/4 of the episode was just slowly building up to the girls learning about like sex and literature and trying to avoid trying to get around talking about it, and then it's just this the main character's slow build up from curiosity to more intense curiosity, and then an explosion of full-blown panic when she walks in on her childhood friend masturbating. Which that scene was just fucking fantastic.
It
was so real.
Yeah, because when I first saw it, like you actually called it right before it happened. It's like, oh, he's probably jerking off, and then that's actually what happened, and I was like, oh my god. Like, I was just kind of like open mouth, sort of like, I felt embarrassed for him.
Yeah, I love how he handles it. He's just kind of like, hot outside recently, isn't it?
Yeah,
and then he just like slowly turns and zips up his pants, leaving the porn on the screen, because if you like quickly react like and try to turn it off, then it's like, well, then she knows I'm doing something wrong.
But yeah,
maybe I could just play it off.
Yeah, just trying to pretend that nothing was going on. Which there are a few different reactions. How, like, at least I've heard how people react to those situations. Like, some people will panic and just shut it down. Others will try to do what he did and basically just pretend that nothing's happening, like nothing weird, I swear.
But then her when she just freaks out and runs away, and the music kicks in,
and then his just absolutely like, oh my god, face, like he just burying his hands, like his face in his hands, just like, I can't believe she saw that.
That whole scene just screams like youth.
Yeah,
it's just freaking out because you figuring out part of the way the world works. It just looks like such a fun journey. Yeah,
like it looks like an absolutely it looks like a great journey, and we're kind of figuring out more about these characters, like individual like journeys into this part of their lives, like their own sexual discoveries and stuff. Like you've got the main girl who realizes by episode 2, which is an awesome like kind of shake to the formula, that she likes her childhood friend.
Loves her childhood friend. But
exactly.
I guess like kid love, which is basically like, I guess.
Yeah, it's infatuation, but it's like that you're their first love. It's so she's kind of realizing that, and it actually admits it to her friends in episode 2, which is she actually going to follow through with those feelings? Is she going to try to do something with them? Well, hopefully, because I'm intrigued, to say the least, with that. Then you have the girl who's always like who's always been seen as kind of plain, kind of boring, but
plain Jane nerdy girl.
Exactly, but is actually like super attractive.
So the subplot with her going on so far is that like the guy who's kind of getting close to her, or trying to get close to her, I don't trust that guy. Like, I feel like he's gonna just be that kind of like high school guy who's just trying to get in her pants or whatever.
Possibly.
This is what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I didn't stop to really consider that, but yeah, that does seem like a very real thing, which would suck if that was the case.
Yeah.
Like,
and it just kind of feels like that's going to happen, because that's the kind of the tone of the show. Because I said it's going to be a fun journey, but it looks like it's going to get kind of heavy. In some parts.
I imagine so, and I imagine that maybe some of the girls might realize that they're not attracted to guys, for instance, or maybe they're just not interested in sex really at all, which would be interesting. So showing some diversity there, and if the show continues at it the way that it's going, in a mature and kind of nuanced way, I'd really appreciate it. I would give massive praise for this show if they continue that route and actually show some difference in that regard.
Can we talk about the itchy crotch joke in the second episode?
Oh my god, yeah.
Just like, I want you to come into this restaurant, and when I give you the signal, this is like, my crotch itches. It's really itchy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the old, this guy wants to sleep with me, so I'll just tell him I have an STD move.
And then when that doesn't work, I'll say, hey, you should hook up with my friend, and then also realize, oh, she also has an STD.
I love the line, yeah, I have to pay you back for having an STD.
And then the other friend
Thank
just
you.
freaking out. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, the show is just like hitting all the right notes in its first couple episodes.
All the cast is wonderful so far.
Yeah,
Like they're each, it seems, having to struggle with a different part of like sexual maturity, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I kind of wonder if I'm curious about the blonde girl who brought up the whole idea of sex in the first place, if that's something she actually wants to experience. Because it makes me wonder if it's just something that she wants to be able to feel normal, it seems. Because, like, she's kind of stressed how, like, she's kind of an actor and stuff like that, and how she grew up with acting experience, so maybe she's just trying to play a part constantly, and it makes me wonder if that interest, like, people have kind of primed her to think that was something you need to be interested in, so maybe she's just thinking, well, maybe I actually have to be. Like, maybe she's asexual, even.
Mm-hmm.
Which I would really appreciate. That'd be really cool, as I said not too long ago. But the show is just absolutely awesome so far. So, last on our list that we're talking about today, this is probably going to be one of the most epic shows this season. And we've already got a few really epic shows.
How are you using the word epic?
Like, it seems like and I say like a fantasy epic, okay. Literally.
Because that word I feel like is overused.
I agree.
Nowadays.
Like, I mean a literal fantasy epic.
Yeah.
When I heard that, it feels very Berserk-y.
Vinland Saga.
Yeah,
by the way.
Vinland Saga.
The title.
Yes. Sorry about that. But Vinland Saga, it feels, is going to be, from what I heard, initially, like some like months back when like the manga was going on, they basically described it as Berserk but Vikings, and it seems to be setting up that way.
Yeah, so they released the first 3 episodes in one chunk, and I'm really glad they did, because these first 3 episodes, it felt like I was watching a movie.
Yeah,
like it's very cinematic in the way of the storytelling and the action sequences.
Yeah, let me just say, these first 3 episodes, very slow pace. Like it is definitely a slow burn of a show. That is by no means a bad thing.
It was a good idea to release 3 episodes at once.
Yeah,
first.
Absolutely, because they're just kind of setting up this world, these characters, like and because we know already where the story is going to go. It's going to be a revenge story. But they're building up just how does the character go from like a naive young boy to somebody who's driven towards revenge.
Yeah, I think the next episode is probably going to be the end of, what's the main character's name?
Thorfinn?
Thorfinn, yeah, at the end of his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that by episode 5 we're probably going to have a time skip.
Probably.
In between 4 and 5 to him becoming an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's a lot of what they wanted to do. Like they wanted to release most of the first arc per se.
Yeah, that I agree with that. And I just want to say it's cool that it takes place in actual this is our world, no question about it. This is our world, like an alternate version of it, but it is still our world. There's still Greenland, there's still Iceland, there's Norway, there's England.
It's a really unique anime setting.
Yeah.
I can't think off the top of my head of any Viking anime.
No, I can't think of any either. Like, once again, the closest thing to where it kind of settles into like a Western European style setting is Berserk. Like, and it seems like this series drove heavy inspiration from it, considering its sort of darker tone that it's going to be going for, and how it's a little bit more mature, a little bit slower paced.
They did a really good job of putting an eye catch in the beginning, where they showed Thor.
Yeah,
Thor's.
Yeah.
Thor's, when they showed him just fucking cutting swaths through bodies onto in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, this guy is basically superhuman. Let me just point that out. Like,
it wasn't
he's jumping across like the ocean or the sea or whatever you want to call it. Like, and from one boat to the next. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's not it's Wit Studio.
Yeah,
but it's not like quite Titan level of animation quality, but it's pretty up there.
Yeah, I will admit that when they went for CG at first, it kind of threw me off. It was like, okay, it's a little clunky. It's not really bad or anything. Like,
yeah, there was like a CG scene where he's like a horizontally moving across the boat.
Yeah,
that was not that great. But the sweeping camera shots when he's jumping onto different boats and cutting people in half.
Yeah, that was pretty damn cool. This, I'm looking forward to more. Like as this actually gets into the meat and potatoes of the plot, because like the first 3 episodes have really just been set up and kind of like building up the story that it's going to tell. It's like this is a prologue. That's what it feels like mainly. It's a prologue, an extended prologue, but a good one at that.
I actually expected the 3 episodes to be his childhood. Like I expected the end of episode 3 to actually kind of time skip.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's why I'm assuming that the 4th episode is going to be, but
yeah, I guess we'll find out. Can I just say also, Askeladd, or however you pronounce his name, I'm going to call him Askeladd.
Which one was that?
He's the one that's being sent to kill Thors, the guy in charge of the mercenary group.
Yeah, the pirate guy.
Yeah, he handled the situation like ridiculously well. Like when he was negotiating with the.
Oh god, that scene was so good.
It was, and then the spear just comes flying through, and it's like, whoops, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, because at first you think it's just
I thought it was an intimidation try.
Yeah, and he's just kind of surprised looking at the spear like, oh man, that almost hit me or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when they show the curtain come off and then
there was a guy in there.
Yeah, it was one of his men.
And they knew that he was there. And
that was such a power move.
Yeah, I loved that. Askeladd is, and then even I don't remember his name, but the captain, the one with the scar in his Floki, that's his name.
Floki, yeah.
He was like, well, I guess he's not just empty words after all, which that's a really good way of going about it. Askeladd is a fascinating character. Like
he's going to be dead though in the next episode.
Thorfinn is going to be the one is going to join his group. That's the plot of the main story. He's trying to get revenge on Askeladd and his group.
Wait, where'd you get that info from?
From the actual title description of the series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Askeladd is like going to be a main character for a while. I think that as Thorfinn is on his revenge, he's going to figure out who hired him in the first place. But I think for now, Thorfinn is mainly just interested in killing Askeladd by joining his group and eventually gaining his trust so he can kill them, as most revenge stories go.
Yeah, so it's pretty obvious that Thors is going to be dead in the next episode.
Either next episode or the episode after that.
It was pretty badass, so he just jumps onto their ship, doesn't pull his weapon out, just starts beating the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
Because I really like his character. He's been through so much shit, and then he finally had something to actually wanted to protect. So he finally started to, I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to kill anybody anymore.
There were so many situations in the episode where, from an outside perspective, when all the kids are like, "Oh, I can't wait to go to war," and all this, I'm like, "You're dumb. You don't understand war." But I think it would be a lot easier to think that way if you were in their situation growing up. Well,
yeah, and given basically their religion and stuff like that, they're taught that there's nothing more satisfying than dying a glorious death on the battlefield. That's the greatest honor like one of their soldier, like a Viking, can have. Also, can I just say that Thorfinn being able to break a kid's arm when he's like 6?
Yeah, I saw him like hit him with the wooden sword. I was like, okay, that kind of hurt, but I didn't expect him to break his arm.
Yeah, that was certainly something, but. And also that entire scene when Thorfinn went to go into his dad's weapon chest and then pulled out the dagger, but then the dad just grabs the dagger and it's just like you're watching him bleed and stuff. That was just delivered. That was so well executed. Just had a lot of intensity, like a really poignant moment when you realize what Thor's is all about and how he's afraid of what his son is going to become because he doesn't want him to go down that path.
But it's looking like it's going to happen anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Well, duh. Because it's a revenge story.
Episode 4, Thors and Thorfinn go home. Everyone's happy. The end.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine if that's actually how it ended. Like all that.
Like the last 8 episodes are just like a slice of life Viking village show.
Yeah. Could you imagine if that's actually the direction they took? That'd be hilarious. Actually,
I'd be fine with
it. It'd be so anticlimactic, but I would be totally okay. Yeah. It'd be kind of like the new God of War, but without all the fighting. because that's kind of what God of War is.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all the shows we have taken a look at for the first week or two.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna be taking a lot of time this week to catch up on, at least watch the first episode or two of the rest of the shows.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And then we're gonna be figuring out probably which shows we're gonna actually be sticking with, and we're gonna be like we said, we're gonna be picking 6 shows. If you've been here before, we used to do 12, but we're gonna be doing 6 shows now. We're gonna sit through the rest of the season talking about those 6 shows in more depth every week, every episode.
And then we'll still probably be watching other shows, and we might you'll probably be able to find like reviews of that. Like I'll personally be updating like all my my thoughts and stuff like that on KITSU. You can follow us there.
Yeah.
So,
which the links to our KITSU profiles are down in the links in the description.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's great to be back. Summer's looking to be a great season. Like, I mean, granted, especially when you're comparing it to the spring, but it looks like it's going to be an amazing season full of a lot of really good shows.
Yeah, a bunch of blockbusters.
Absolutely. Well, it is summertime. So anyway, till next time, take care of yourselves. Anchor away, everyone.